but now is time. We are going to take a look at an executive panel. So if you would, please join me in welcoming Jamie McIntyre from TD, Leanne Johnson from ICBC, and Heidi Worthington from Pacific Blue Cross. Welcome, ladies. Grab a seat, get comfortable. These are the director's chairs I was telling you about. And look at you gracefully. Thank you so much. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Jamie, maybe we can start with you. Who are you? How'd you get here today with us? Share a little bit.
First of all, thanks, Bill, for this amazing event. You're doing a great job hosting it, and I'm so thrilled to be here. It's a really wonderful time. My name's Jamie McIntyre. I'm a district vice president for TD Bank, and I support BC Northern Interior and the Yukon. I'm also the TD's Pacific co-lead for the Women in Leadership Diversity File. I've been with TD for about 23 years. The last 3 in my current job, and I have had the opportunity to live and work in many different locations across Western Canada and the Yukon. I've been in the prairies, on Vancouver Island a few times, and different locations here in the Lower Mainland. And I've worked in a couple different business lines with TD, retail and business banking. And I'm proud to say that I have spent the majority of my career with TD. And there are a couple of reasons for that. The first reason is that I've always believed that I could do whatever I want to do there. Whatever choices I made in my career were supported, and they were based on choices I made. So I've always felt strongly about that. And secondly, my personal values really aligned with TD's values as an organization, and they're centered around diversity and inclusion, bringing your entire self to work and really to everything that you do, and a high value placed on diverse thinking and progressive thinking. At TD, our mission is to be the financial institution of choice for women, and we want to accomplish that through 3 of our shared commitments, which are to increase, sustainably increase representation in leadership from women across all backgrounds and from all communities, and to propel the success of women across all stages of their careers, not just the executive levels, and to champion forward-thinking workplace programs that will be of benefit to women, but also to all of our colleagues. We really want to make sure that we're able to increase leadership, give an opportunity for leadership to women, and have put in place a target to increase our executive representation across Canada to 40% female by the year 2020. And we're well on our way to doing that at 36% now.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Leanne.
Good afternoon. I'm Leanne Johnson, and I'm the Director of People and Culture at ICBC. I have spent the past 15 years or so in leadership roles in human resources, predominantly in insurance, financial services, and manufacturing. I am extremely passionate about women in leadership. And in my role at ICBC, I'm responsible for operational excellence, organizational design, leadership, change, and learning. So I'd like to share with you a little bit about ICBC and what we're doing and our commitment to women in leadership and why I'm here today. So many of you know who ICBC is. You've probably visited some of our offices at some point in time to either renew or get your auto insurance, get a driver's license, or secure ID. We also work with different stakeholder partners to ensure safe roads in the province. So please, please, please leave your phone alone when you are driving. Yeah, so all joking aside, I'm actually pretty serious about that. ICBC is very committed to women's development and women in leadership. Our CEO, Mark Blucher, was one of the first people to sign, one of the first CEOs to sign the Minerva Pledge for women and really advancing diversity. Last year, we implemented our diversity and inclusion strategy, and we have a number of pillars to this strategy, And really our vision is to be the leader in diversity and inclusion in the BC public sector by 2020. And this includes having 50-50 parity of women and men in leadership roles. So my team is actively working towards this goal and partnering with the rest of our organization to do this. So I'm delighted to be here today at this fantastic event and share some of my stories and experiences and my passion for women in leadership. And so I have a question for all of you out in the audience. Why are you here today? And I want you to think about what women and leadership means to you.
Thanks, Leanne. Heidi, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Heidi Worthington. I'm a Senior Vice President at Pacific Blue Cross. And I'm very proud and feel very fortunate to work at Pacific Blue Cross, which is one of the local, the only actually local health benefits provider. But we have already at Blue Cross attained a 50% level of women on the executive team and 50% level of women in senior roles. And I would say we were also one of the original signatories too of Minerva. And I work for a CEO that truly is gender agnostic, and it's wonderful, and it's a very supportive environment there. I lead 4 different divisions at Pacific Blue Cross, which is about 200 of the 800 people. Not that the number of people is a measure of leadership per se, but I've definitely found it stretches your leadership skills when you're leading larger teams that may or may not be like you and come from backgrounds like yours. I haven't always worked at female-friendly workplaces. I worked for a large major multinational for 15 years, and for 9 of those years I was working globally, and I was traveling weekly. And I experienced firsthand gender discrimination and bias that I think in Canada we would find shocking, and I'm sure it's still happening to this day, and it might be happening at some of your workplaces. And that's why I wanted to come today, because I really appreciate what I have now. And my guess is not all of you have what I have, and I'd like to empower male and female leaders to empower their female teams to get the best from both them and to get the best results for their organization.
Beautiful. Well, I am glad, yes, recognize. And I'm glad you're all here. We've had a chance to chat briefly over the phone and had some email communications go back and forth, so you know I have some prepared questions for you. But when there's about 20 minutes left in our discussion, guess what? I'm coming to you. So grab a pen and paper, write down some questions. I'll be running around the audience yet again. I didn't work out this morning, just yoga. So this is my workout. So I want to make sure that I get a good workout in and we hear all of your questions. So please be ready for those. Jamie, I want to start with you. And tell me about your definition of women in leadership and what has been your personal path towards leadership?
I think I've heard it said that leadership is about making a difference, using your actions to create change. And I think when I think about women in leadership, that statement's very relevant. And the best thing that we can do is to embrace and to champion change. To continue to not accept the status quo and to celebrate diverse and progressive thinking men and women, because that's the best way that we'll continue to grow and to create our future. I would say what brought me to this leadership path would be, I come from a family of very strong women, and my mother was very influential in having me challenge bias from a very early age. And that was gender-based bias, but also sexual orientation or racial bias. She really showed me that diverse thinking was very important and that people see things from different perspectives. And that's actually a very positive contribution to society, and it should be encouraged and not stifled. My sister is still a very large and strong role model in my life, and she has, not like large, but she's, she wouldn't like it if I said that, but she has challenged me to continue to grow and to take responsibility for my own growth and not leave it up to others. And she also has challenged me to look at my own biases. What am I doing? What limits am I putting on myself on what I can and cannot do? And then finally, I have 4 children, and I wanted to be a role model to all 4 of my children. I have 2 daughters and 2 sons, and I wanted them to know that their actions make a difference, and that all 4 of them, male or female, can create change, because what is unacceptable or just unusual today can become the norm tomorrow with their help.
Wonderful. Leanne, we talked a little bit about today, and why do we need this day at all? Isn't leadership leadership? Is it gender specific? How is this conversation today different?
Right. Okay, well, recently the World Economic Forum said it's going to take over 170 years, yes, 170 years, for gender parity, and that this actually represents the biggest opportunity in human and economic development. So while I agree leadership is leadership, I think women have a different set of challenges or issues, and therefore we need to have a different conversation. And I agree with my other panelists here that it's not just a conversation that involves women, it's men as well. And I want to share a quick story. Back in 1994, I had the opportunity to work in the Caribbean island nation of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And I was part of the team preparing a report to go to the 1995 UN Conference on Women in Beijing, China. And what really struck me is we held workshops around the country was that the same issues women were facing in Canada were often the same issues the women were facing in St. Vincent. And it was really about how did they grow their leadership skills, how did they grow as individuals, and how could they fully participate in the communities that they were a part of. And I saw lots of barriers in St. Vincent that really contributed or detracted, I guess, from women being able to achieve what they wanted to. And those were barriers to childcare, they were barriers to education. And I think beyond the barriers, there's stereotypes, there's biases, there's even social norms. And so I think events like today are an opportunity to change the conversation, to talk about creating possibilities, to challenge assumptions, to learn from each other, and really help embrace and advance women's opportunities.
Wonderful, thank you, thank you. Heidi, you talk about organizations that have female senior leadership and that they outperform those who don't. So what's been your experience with that? What have you seen?
Well, I think there's quite a bit of documentation to show that on the stock exchange, those organizations that have a higher percentage of female senior leadership do outperform those, and that's just numbers. I think what's interesting is to try and get below why that might be. And I think that's because women do lead in a slightly different way. Not all female leaders would fall into this camp, but I think generally from what I've read and what I've experienced, women are fairly open and pretty good problem solvers. So they're more, I think, welcome to say, look, I'm not the expert. I'm not a one-man show. I need other experts and other people to support me in what it is that we need to get done, and they're willing to be pretty pragmatic about getting it done. So that's would be one thing. And potentially in that way, pretty good team players. Again, because they're not used to being the one-man show per se, and they're really working to collaborate and be open to some of those other maybe unusual type of business models or work arrangements to achieve the results that they're looking for. And lastly, I hope that this isn't always true, but I've personally found in my career, when I started, I was the only female in an entirely male team. And I had to work really hard to get to where I wanted to go. I don't know whether or not you could say it was harder than the men or not, but I kind of think I did have to really prove my stuff. So I think from that perspective, a lot of women out there have worked really hard. They know their stuff by the time they get to a certain level of promotion, and they're really quite ready to contribute in a very meaningful way when they're given the opportunity. So I think from that perspective, it just makes a lot of business sense.
Wow, I mean, and I think we can all relate to the situations where, for me, it's a great metric when somebody has the courage and confidence to ask for help or support when they need it. And we all know a certain gender that will drive and drive and drive and refuse ever to admit that they need help and assistance. Thank goodness for GPS and Google Maps. That's all I can say right now. Jamie, talk to me. How important is mentorship? And does such collaboration enhance women's success? How have mentors made a difference in your career?
I think there are many benefits to having a mentor and to being a mentor. And as was heard this morning, I think it's very important to have many mentors over the course of your career. I saw somewhere once where it said, if you're thinking of mentorship, think diversity. And to that point, I had a colleague that was saying that she actually sought out a younger and more junior mentor because she was really interested in learning about Gen Y. So it depends what you're looking for. I have had mentors make tremendous impact on my career and the way I viewed things. I think where we need to be careful, though, is oftentimes, I think especially as women with careers, we get to a certain point and we say, okay, I need a mentor. So Sally's an executive or higher up in the company, so I'm going to ask Sally to be my mentor, or ask someone else to ask Sally to be my mentor. But I think we should question ourselves first. What is it that you want to get out of that relationship? Is it certain skills developed, or a viewpoint, or knowledge about something? Once you've found out what it is you want to get, then you can line up the mentor that best suits that. And it might not be Sally at all. It might be Julia or Tony. And then the next thing I'd say is go into that relationship with a bit of a structure. I often heard you need to own the relationship, but I didn't really know what that meant. And especially if your mentor is much senior to you, it's not always a comfortable experience. But I'd say go in there knowing what you want to learn and how you want to be directed, or find insights from the mentor that you connect with. And give back to your own insights, because it's really a mutually learning experience.
Beautiful. With your organizations, ladies, as well, you talked about your goals of becoming 50-50 or having achieved that. Do you have structured mentorship programs within your organizations now?
Yes, we do at ICBC, and we've recently run 2 cohorts through the mentoring program, and we'll continue to expand it this year. So it's been a very important part in helping people learn about the organization, but also create connections, create sponsors, and create opportunities.
So those are the 3 or 4 key objectives of the mentorship program then?
Yes, yes. And personally, I can relate, Jamie, to your comment about having diverse mentors. My 14-year-old niece is my social media mentor.
Every now and then we need a 12-year-old to help us out, don't we? It's sort of like help, help, help. And so, Leanne, talk to us a little bit about diversity and inclusion then, and how they can positively impact women in leadership roles. What do you think the biggest issue facing women in leadership positions is today?
I think one of the biggest issues is just opportunity, and recognizing the choices that we have and seeking those out. So through the diversity and inclusion strategy that we have at ICBC, we have a number of different platforms, and we've set some goals for ourselves as well. And so I shared in my intro that by 2020, we want to have 50-50 women and men in leadership roles. So we're doing a number of things to do this. We've set up employee resource groups, and we have one specifically dedicated to women in leadership and also parenting. We've also put all our leaders through unconscious bias training. So we want to become a more inclusive organization, and we really need our leaders to understand their biases, how they think about how they bring someone on, who they put forward to promotion, and just increasing that awareness. The other thing we're doing is really ramping up our leadership programs and making sure that we have equal representation of men and women in those programs. So we're leading some internal programs, and then we participate in a number of things like today. So I have to say a big shout out to the ICBC women who are here today. And then also participating in Minerva's Leading the Way. So it's a multi-year strategy, and we're looking at a number of different ways to really communicate, use our internal intranet, and give women a voice and an opportunity.
And so to any or all of you then, I'm hearing some amazing things that your incredible corporations and organizations are doing, but what about an individual in our audience today? What do you think they should do in order to get and or take advantage of those opportunities?
Well, certainly, I think what women don't do often enough is to step up. I had an opening on my team, and there was one female talent who we all thought from the two leaders in the organization would be a great fit. And when we approached her, she didn't think she'd be ready, and were we sure? And I remember thinking, go for it. We're practically offering this up to you. So it was this lack of confidence that they were ready for it. And I think that's one of the things that I've heard. I don't know what you guys think, if this is true or not, but I've heard that men will go for a promotion if they think they can get it, and women go for a promotion when they know they're qualified for it. And those are two very different things. So I think for men and women in general, it's a little bit of what some of the advice you've heard already is: decide what it is you're looking for, do your homework, and then step up for the opportunity and let it known that you're looking for that opportunity. That's really, you have to take control into your own hands, really. Your organization can support, but at the end of the day, it's really up to you.
So, and that's interesting because Kirsten's talked about some of that data just before the lunch break, and that I think she quoted 60% of men will go for it if they think they kind of stand a chance, and 95% of women will only go if they truly believe that they've got the qualifications. So, and I hate to quote a man today, but it was the late great Dr. Stephen Covey that shares with us his definition of leadership is communicating to people their worth and potential so clearly they come to see it in themselves. And so how can we discover our potential then? You felt confidence in this person, but they didn't feel it in themselves. What can we do to build our confidence?
I think one of the things we can do in our organizations is challenge some of our systemic barriers or become aware of them. So recently I was at a Women in Leadership event, and there was a man there from a mining company. And he told this story about how they looked at all of their job descriptions, and they were specifically taking out language that they thought was screening out women. And he specifically referenced a role of a heavy equipment operator. And in the job description, they said, you must have heavy equipment operating experience. And so, as you can imagine, that wasn't necessarily a call out to women to apply. But then they said, well, hang on a second. We have the world's best training program. We can train anybody to operate this equipment. And they took out that qualification in their job descriptions, and lo and behold, they started having women apply. And not only did they have women apply, but the women actually stayed in these roles because they were already a part of these communities.
And I'll bet any money they operated the equipment better than any of their male counterparts, with fewer accidents and with higher safety standards. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was the data, just saying. Hi, Heidi. Kirsten also talked today about flow and how she achieves sort of what others would call work-life balance. What's been your experience with work-life balance traveling the world as well, and given your circumstances?
We were briefly talking about this in the back, actually. For most of my executive life, I've been a single parent. And I really think that this notion of balance is interesting, and you really need to define that for yourself. I don't think at any particular point in time I felt like I was zen, but I certainly felt quite happy with the choices that I was making. Maybe other parents might think that I wasn't very balanced because I had my daughter in daycare before and after her programs. That's how I managed working full time. But we were all good with it. So if you're good with it and the people are around you are good with it, then you've got balance per se, which is much more about integrating your choices together and not having a formal barrier, I think, between necessarily working hours and non-working hours. And then if you're not happy with how things are going and the people around you aren't, then you need to make changes. It's really that quite simple. And to reach out and ask for help. Whether or not you need help with your career development or whether or not you need help with stuff outside of your career like your family, is to make sure that you're lining up resources. And that's, again, going back to you don't have to be a one-woman show. You can ask for help in those areas where you feel comfortable delegating those roles. And when you're consciously making those choices, then you really don't feel hard done by any stretch. You know why you're doing what you're doing and what you're getting with the choices that you're making.
So, some recognition there for you. Well done. So, what about the inner critic, though? You talked a little bit about that, if you will. But what about, no, again, offense here, but those outer critics that are talking behind our backs?
I absolutely experienced that. I remember once meeting a mom on the playground, and she said, "Oh, yeah, you're the mom who's never around." Yeah. And she's now a good friend of mine. And it was because... and I was taken aback because I adore my daughter, but it was the choices I was making to have an engaged work life. And sure, you do feel guilty about that sometimes, but when I do, I reach out to those who love me and who remind me that this is what makes me happy. And being a happy mom is also making my daughter quite happy, and she is a happy little girl. And it reminds me, too, that I'm setting an example for my daughter that I'd like for her to have, which is, as long as everybody's happy, you're good, and you should make those choices that get you there, and you have to make compromises. Nothing's a free ride. You have to pay your price, but if you're willing to pay for it and you don't feel the other people are suffering for it. And I really don't think my daughter has, aside from maybe every once in a while, when she reminds me, I think that we've all come through it pretty well and gotten a lot out of the experiences that we've had.
Wonderful. So you're an example of great success with a daughter as a single parent. But Jamie, you mentioned 2 and 2. What? Yeah. Like, I'm single and no children, and I barely have time for the stuff I need to do. How did you manage?
Well, 2 of my children are grown, so that helps. And 2 are in high school.
They weren't always
They weren't
growing,
always
though.
grown,
You
no.
got there somehow.
But I think I agree. You know, and when I had my older children, it was, you know, I think there was perhaps even more judgment around a working mother. And, you know, I don't know why. I think it's a struggle for everybody. I think that work-life balance is something I hear a lot about with men as well, but way more often with women. And for some reason, whether it's, you know, culture, society, or just years of ingrained habit, when women have a child, they seem to feel like they become responsible for everything, everyone's comfort, and even everyone's happiness. And so I started to think of the way I was looking at it, you know, and my own bias was that. And I think that, you know, I would rather call it an integration, as Heidi said, than work-life balance. And it is completely about making choices. But I think that's the same for everybody in life, you know. So sometimes the choices are really small. You know, I'm going to work an extra 45 minutes and just order dinner in. And sometimes it's a compromise, you know, I'll get up earlier, or you do your homework and I'll finish my work and then we'll watch the movie. And sometimes it's a really big choice. Like when my youngest was born, I had 2 teenagers, a toddler and a baby and a dog. And I just didn't know how, and my husband at the time worked out of town during the week. So I just didn't know how I was going to handle it all and how I was going to be able to give everything that I chose that I wanted to give to my kids at that time and still give to my work the way I wanted to. So I made the personal decision, and it was not easy, but I made the decision to not return to work after my maternity leave. And that ended up being 6 years at home. And it's a choice that was right for me at that time in my life, and when I went back to work, that was a choice that was right for me too. Somebody said this morning that you can't have everything at once. But you can have it all, but not all at once, and I felt that's how it worked for me.
Interesting, yeah, so that was Kirsten this morning that mentioned that, and Dr. Anne-Marie Slaughter has shared her thoughts with us as well, and she often talks about when you make your choice to go and work, and leave the husband, if you will, at home to raise the children, if you will, from that perspective while you're not at the house, that you have to be okay with what they do. And sometimes you come home and they're sitting there in, you know, shorts and a t-shirt and unshowered and watching TV, and you would have had dinner ready and on the table, but you have to just back away and ask, so what is for dinner, honey? And just see what you get served. You may not like it, but that's what's being served for dinner tonight. I hope you like your KD with or without wieners. So, Leanne, if you would, how can we evolve a community of leaders to support women in leadership roles?
I think there's a number of ways, and I think Jamie and Heidi have already shared some of them. But I think, number one, really recognize the business case here and the opportunity. There's been a lot of research out there recently from McKinsey, E&Y, Harvard Business Review, all showing how diverse teams and diverse thinking leads to better decision making. So it not only is the right thing to do, it actually it makes sense. I think it's also having diversity and inclusion strategies and talking about it within our organizations. It's about removing systemic barriers, so the one that I mentioned earlier about job descriptions, but I've seen it crop up in things like even vacation policies. You know, I know of one organization, and you know, your vacation is tied to your length of service, but once you move into a more senior role, your vacation is actually capped. So for women who have children and want to take that time, it's actually quite a barrier for them to step up if their vacation is actually cut. I think employee resource groups within our organizations are a very important way to connect women and to continue this conversation. And I guess events like this and continuing the conversation to me are the most important thing. And it's about taking action, and it doesn't have to be a big action, but it's making that decision to act, to have a conversation, look for possibilities, look at the choices that you have and how you can open doors and choices for others.
Thank you. Now, just to not appear rude, I'm going to pose one more question to all of you, and then I'm coming out to get the questions that the audience has to share with us. And I'm interested in your thoughts, because I know what happened for me when I saw this. The covers of many of the UK newspapers recently regarding Brexit, where Theresa May and Nicola Sturgeon's legs were a bigger issue than Brexit itself. And so what role does appearance play? What about age? None of these seem to matter at all or ever get questioned when it's a male leader, but yet for women, it seems to me to be a very different story. Who would like to start? And please excuse me as I step into the audience to get more questions for you.
I can start with that one. I mean, that was crazy, the Brexit thing. That's pretty outrageous, and it sparked a lot of, remarks. And I read somewhere, a post somewhere that said the 1950s called and they want their article back. You know, it was outrageous, but I think that what we have to be even more careful about is the subtleties that go on. I was recently talking to a male colleague, and he said, and this doesn't sound great, but I thought it was very brave of him to own up to it, and he said, he had recently self-discovered that when he was interviewing a woman that was less attractive, he put greater emphasis on making sure that she was capable of the job. And now that he has discovered that, he's conscious of this bias, and he can take steps to make sure that he doesn't do that. But I do think that happens all the time, and even I think the whole Brexit scandal, that article was written by a woman. It's men and women, and we need to take a look at how we're looking at these things and what our own biases are. And I think it's the same with age.
Yes, I agree. And this program that we've been doing on unconscious bias has been really remarkable in unearthing some of these issues that you raise. And, I would add to the Brexit article, too, Amal Clooney, I think she was addressing the UN, and people were talking about her baby bump versus all her accomplishments and what she was actually speaking about. So I think our world is very tied to image and how things look in social media. And I think just by talking about it and shattering some of those myths and really just standing up and saying, hey, I've got something important to say, and not letting people get away with those comments, calling them on it and making sure that we're voicing our opinions.
I think one of the things to add to that as well is to do a little bit of self-policing, because we all contribute to this. As much as we'd like to think that we're above it, we're not. So catch yourself when you're actually making judgments on someone's appearance for whatever it might be, and it might be male, female, it could be their cultural background, whatever it is, or socioeconomic standing. That's also an issue, I think, when it comes to interviews. So just, if we all self-police, we'd be in a better place. And then lastly is, stand proud. I know that for myself, when I first started in my career, one of my good guy friends at the office just kind of said, the more you look like us, the better this is going to go. Can you imagine? I'm like 6 feet tall, long blonde hair. And I remember thinking, I could do that. And at that point in time, this is in the 90s, you did look a little bit more masculine at work for those reasons. And I think as I've matured in my career, I've decided just not to give in to that. And even though I'm 6 feet high, I still wear heels and I wear dresses, and I'm just myself. And I think if we're authentically ourselves in our leadership roles as well as in our private lives, then I think we'll hopefully start to get past that if we become more aware. So if we can combine those two things, maybe we'll be in a better place.
Hi, my name is Jeanette, and as women, we hear about the glass ceiling all the time.
Yep.
Is it working? There we go. How do you work this?
Sorry, that's my apologies. I've set it fixed, guys. Turned it off. Sorry.
Better? There we go. As women, we hear about the glass ceiling all the time. What are your thoughts about this? And do you feel women use it as a self-imposed roadblock to their own success?
I can jump in on that. I think it really depends on the leader. I really think this, I've worked for a few different CEOs, and they can set a really different tone. So as a young female talent, boy, I'd look at the top and see what type of attitudes are there, like a Mark Blucher. I also know some of the leaders within TD. They're fantastic. For the CEO, Jan Gruda, they really do make a difference, so look at the leader. Ritchie Brothers as well. I forget the name of the CEO now at Ritchie Brothers. A very male-dominated industry. I've heard him speak. Is there a Ritchie Brothers team here? Yay! Shout out. So I think your CEO rocks. You can tell him why I said that, because he's just, right, he's making a real conscious choice. So that would be one. And the other one, I think, for women is, I think we just need to forgive the expression, but have more balls. Like, right? I think we need to make our aspirations known and not be afraid to be seen as overly aggressive or ambitious. I think so often it's unfortunate that women who are ambitious get painted in a negative light, and that's really too bad, because most of those ambitious women are great team players all the less, and they can be threatening maybe just because they're good, I don't know, but is to not be afraid of your own ambition and to go for it. And I really, really do wish that for the younger women, let your bosses know what roles you're interested in and where you want to go, and if he or she is not supporting you, find someone else in the organization who will.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think it's really owning your strengths, knowing what you want to do, what you want to accomplish, and getting out there and finding mentors and connecting with individuals and connecting with organizations that are going to help you succeed.
Yeah, I agree with everything that you've said. And I think as women, we need to make sure that we're helping other women too. We need to make sure that we're looking out for each other just the same way that men do. They used to call it an old boys club, you know. It's called an old women's club. That doesn't sound right, does it?
Ladies right here in the center.
Hi, I just want to say it's so refreshing to see an all-women's executive panel. It's just awesome to hear you guys speak. My question for you is, can you share some pivotal moments that really encouraged you and catapulted you as a leader?
I can think of one, and it was actually an interview that I went to. And I had prepared, I had researched this company, I really wanted this role. And I felt like I really aced the interview. And when I spoke with the recruiter the next day, she said, Leanne, they absolutely think that you can do the job, but you're not the right fit. And so I thought, not the right fit? Okay. And then I reflected back on being toured around their offices. And I had actually only seen one woman on the whole 2 floors of the organization. And she was the receptionist. And so my first kind of shock and disbelief was then replaced by, well, that's not the kind of organization I want to work for. And then the second piece was, I'm going to show them, that my skills and my talents and my insights are of value, and that I can take that, I can own it, and I can rock it somewhere else.
Right here in the center.
I'll stand up. Hi. First of all, I'd just like to say, really like the comment about that women need balls. I completely agree. And then next to that, I'd just like to say, for someone, myself, who has a lot of passion, sometimes doesn't know what to do with it. I don't know if that has to do with my age or just because I feel like so revved up about every subject, but when I have a project or something, I just feel so passionate about it and I want to get things done. Do you have any advice for someone who maybe struggles to either maybe listen to other people's opinions or just settle down in general?
Oh, that's hilarious. I can entirely relate to that. So I love that spirit, by the way. And first of all, don't ever change that internal passion. It's an amazing engine for you, and it'll take you places. But having worked in other countries, you do have to adapt your style depending on your audience. And there's many cultures, and there are other people who will find that overwhelming, and they'll want to tune you out. So you've got to recognize when you've got an audience that is going to be overwhelmed and will be actually distanced from you because of the amount of passion and enthusiasm. And I had to learn that the hard way in some foreign countries, that a loud, passionate businesswoman is like a total turnoff for listening to them. The second thing I would say, and I'm thinking of Sue Paish, who's the CEO of Life Labs. Do we have any Life Labs team members here? There we go, awesome. I was on a panel with Sue, and I thought this comment and advice was hilarious, so I hope you find it equally as entertaining. She said, when you're with a group of men, you have to, she told you this one, speak lower, slower, and less. Lower, slower, and less. And she said, it's like you're talking to your dog. Which just cracked up the entire room, which was mostly men, I have to say. And they took it well, but I thought, God, is that true? And then I thought about it, and I thought, slower, lower, and less. That's probably quite true. So maybe that's become one of your new mantra. If you've got a group of people who you think are not going to be as passionate as you, a little slower, a little lower, and a little less might get you where you want to go.
Panel, I'm in the center at the back.
Hi there. I'm an old dog, I would say. I've been in the workplace for 30 years and have seen many changes and many struggles for women going through. One of the things I want to commend is TD Bank and ICBC for actually having quotas. I know there was a discussion earlier about whether quotas are the way to go, and having been sitting there waiting for people to do the right thing takes forever. And that if we actually have numbers and targets to shoot for, that opens the doors for people to scoot in there and do some really good work, and that opens the doors then for other people. But while we're here talking about leadership, and I know leadership comes in many different styles, all the speakers today are white. And I'm just wondering, when we're talking about diversity, it would have been really nice to see some more diversity here. And I would have loved to have heard an Indigenous woman leader talking about leading her community.
So that's really fabulous feedback. And I have to say that's one of the things that at Pacific Blue Cross, I mentioned to you that senior management in the executive team is already 50% female. So what we've done is we've set our sights on diversity, period. And I'm proud to say that the white men are a minority on the executive team. One of the men is a gay pride guy, and we love his passion and spirit, speaking of passion. And we've done surveys within the organization to get a better understanding of what the cultural diversity is in the organization and what some of the inherent biases are from a cultural perspective. So we're kind of moving maybe past gender to that cultural dynamic, because to some extent, I hope that, you know, in the near future, not in the short term, we don't have to talk about gender anymore. We've kind of got that one done and dusted. And then we're moving on to cultural diversity. But sadly, I think it's taken us, like women before us have been trying to move these glass ceilings for years and years. And I'm really disappointed with how long it's taking. So I really hope that for cultural diversity, we can move a lot faster.
I would say at TD, we do have a diversity file for cultural diversity as well, visual minorities. And I think that's moving quite well. To your point about an Aboriginal woman, I think that what we need to do more, and what we're trying to do at TD, is propel women through all stages of their careers, because not everybody has the same opportunity just to step up and become an executive right away. We need to move people from through the pipeline and invest in women at more junior levels as well for that to happen.
And I'll just add that our diversity and inclusion strategy has actually 4 different targets, and we're looking at women in leadership, as I mentioned, but also increasing representation of First Nations and visible minorities and people with disabilities. So we've got active employee resource groups in all of these areas, and we do truly see that diversity and inclusion and leadership are really a human conversation.
Ladies, just a little bit further back.
Hi, So, I'm a student at Simon Fraser University, and being here the entire day, I've been so blown away, and I actually think I can do something seeing all the amazing role models today. I guess one thing, though, is that this entire day has also got me to be really scared about what's going to happen when I'm going to leave. So what would your advice be to a young woman entering the business market and world, and how I can not only make it better and kind of add to this positive impact that you're making, but also just what to do?
I would say, and I think it's been touched on a bit before, but understand what it is that you want to do. Understand that you'll have to make choices and be vocal. Step up and say, you know, once you've figured out where you want to begin, let everyone know, this is where I want to begin. This is what I can bring to the table, and what can you give me to learn and help develop me and grow, and you'll get my insights as well. I think everything you do going forward needs to be a give and take for the people around you, for the organization you work for or with, and stepping up is the first step.
I think that's a great question, and I can honestly say I think I'm scared every day. And I think I look for opportunities to scare myself, whether it's trying a new black run at Whistler Blackcomb, or getting up here and speaking in front of all of you amazing women today. So I think, you know, if you flip that scared piece and look at it as challenges, and how can I challenge myself, and what do I want to learn, and how do I want to grow, and how can I reach out to different people to help me get there, I think that reframing will take you a long way.
I have a question. I'm curious how you, or if you have any tips to navigate mansplaining in the workplace, or having male colleagues parrot your ideas as though they were their own with great authority.
I wish I had a really great, succinct answer for that, actually, but I've experienced your pain, actually, with someone taking an idea and running with it. And sometimes that's just going to happen, and just be proud of the fact that you had a great idea, but then you make a little mental note that it'll never happen again. And that's a little bit about, sometimes it's preceding an idea. I know certainly for the executive, we have executive meetings on Wednesday mornings, which is why I wasn't here with you this morning. And often what I do before I actually table an idea to my peers on the executive team is I'll seek their consult about it outside of the meeting. So they kind of almost already know what I'm going to bring to the table before I bring it to the table. And in that way, it's not your idea, it's actually a collective idea that you happen to be the one who's bringing it. And people get known that you actually work that way. Because at the end of the day, in a lot of organizations, it's not really whose idea, it's who can get it done and who can action it that really is who adds a ton of value, let's say. So that might be one thing, is trying to actually seed things one-on-one and be the one who tables it with others' input, and then drive it home and make it happen.
And keep standing up. Keep trying.
Panel off to your far left.
Hi, I just have a quick question. I'm a millennial, so sometimes a lot of people approach me and say that your generation is really entitled. And throughout my academic career and my professional career, it's harder being a millennial and a female, because I've witnessed through different people say, oh, I didn't get that role because I was a woman, or because of my racial background, and they kind of do it that way. So when earlier you said you're self-policing, I personally really am passionate about, you don't remove barriers for women by putting up barriers for men. And so how do you exude that to people who kind of say, oh, I didn't get because of women, and that might not be entirely true?
That's funny. I've heard both sides of that. I've heard men who didn't get the job say she only got it because she was a woman. And I think that it is our responsibility to step up in both cases, to say, why do you think you didn't get it because you were a woman? Are you qualified for the job? Was somebody more qualified? Like, I think dig into it. And do you feel like that is something that happens to you a lot? It really is about conversation. And also, when we hear a man say she only got it because she was a woman, we should be stepping up for that too, saying, well, why do you think that? And I think if we challenge people to actually look at what they're saying and think about it, that more often than not, that they will come to self-realization that there's more to it. And they're, usually somebody doesn't get or not get the job based on you're a woman or you're, not. So I would say.
Panel up front on your left.
Hi, my name is Maria, and I work at BCIT. And I'm very proud to say that BCIT is one of the most inclusive and diverse organizations to work for. So I'm very proud to work for them. In the last few years, I felt that society was really making a progress when it came to diversity and inclusion. However, sometimes I feel that we've taken a step back with all the crap that's going on with our neighbors in the States. So what is your opinion on that? And do you feel that we have taken a step back?
Well, at risk of getting myself in trouble now, I think what's happened to the South has given permission to some bad behavior, and it's made it okay for people to say things that maybe they've thought or that maybe they, have experienced or believe in some way. But what I think has also happened is it's created a new conversation for women. And we're talking about what's important to women. You know, the march that happened shortly after the inauguration, that's a very powerful moment. And I think the more we can have conversations and be active, the better. So while I don't agree what's happening to the South, I really like that it's igniting a passion and a spark to continue a conversation.
Beautiful. Oh, I need to turn myself back on again. Sorry. Guys, do you have me now? Sorry. So thank you so much. I have one more question for you, but I'm so excited for Valerie Jared because Valerie, coming from the South, is actually Iranian African American, and she is our keynote for the day. So I'm really proud that we're able to present that to us here in Canada. And so, what are you excited about? I'm excited about Valerie Jared coming. What are you excited about? Who wants to start?
Well, I can start. I just think it is, we've spoken about that. It's an honor to share our experiences with you as panelists. And thank you so much for your attention and your time. And really know that each one of you can make meaningful change in this space. It doesn't matter if you're in a leadership role, if you're entry level, or if you're in school and you haven't even started, you all contribute to the solution. So please know that you can make a big difference, and most importantly, try to make that difference for yourself.
I echo those sentiments as well. I'm really excited to see how many people are here and the types of conversations I've heard in the hallways and on the breaks. I'm also really excited about technology and how it can help break down some barriers and not only change the way we work, but even change where we work. So I think that only opens more doors for women.
I'm excited about how far we've come in all our diversity areas, and women is one of them. We've come a very, very long way in the last 30 or 40 years, and there's still a long way to go, but having events like this, you know, are great. They're great catalysts for everybody to want to be involved and to keep going in the right direction. And I do think involving men is something that we really need to do here. It has to be about all of society, not segregation. And so I think it's equally important that men and women are involved, and I'm excited about the way the world is looking for my children.
Beautiful. I have to say I'm excited. This has to have been one of our best panels that we've ever compiled. So ladies, your experience, thank you so much for sharing.